Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into some of the most incredible stories from the Bible. Today we're exploring one of the most unforgettable tales ever told, the story of Joseph. It's a story filled with dreams, betrayal, forgiveness, and one of the most shocking plot twists in the entire Bible. You won't want to miss this. Joseph's life wasn't just an emotional roller coaster. It was a journey filled with divine purpose and lessons for us today. So, get comfortable and let's dig into this amazing story, uncovering new insights that you might not have noticed before. Let's start with Joseph's early life. Born into a large family, Joseph was the 11th of 12 sons, and his father Jacob loved him more than all the others. Now, in a family, especially one this large, is bound to cause problems. Jacob gave Joseph a beautiful multicolored coat. This wasn't just a nice gift, it was a symbol. In those days, clothes like that indicated royalty or importance, and Jacob was essentially elevating Joseph above his brothers. But Joseph wasn't just favored. He also had dreams that seemed to show his future greatness. He dreamed of sheaves of grain and stars bowing down to him, symbolizing his brothers paying him homage. Now, imagine if your younger sibling told you they were destined to rule over you. How would you feel? Joseph's brothers were furious. They couldn't take any more of his arrogance and favoritism. But here's an interesting question for us. Do you think Joseph was aware of how his dreams would impact his brothers? Was he simply naive, or was he a little too proud of his special status? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As the tension grew, the brothers' jealousy boiled over. One day, when Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were out tending sheep, they saw their chance. They plotted to kill him. Thankfully, Reuben, the oldest, stepped in and convinced them not to kill Joseph, but to throw him into a pit instead. Reuben planned to rescue Joseph later, but things didn't go as he expected. While Reuben was away, the other brothers saw a caravan of traders heading to Egypt, and they decided to sell Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. Now, think about that. Joseph was betrayed by his own family and sold into slavery. He went from being the favored son to being a mere possession. Can you imagine the shock, the terror he must have felt? This moment reminds us of the deep impact betrayal can have, especially when it comes from the people we trust the most. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you? It's devastating, isn't it? But as we'll see, Joseph's story doesn't end there. He's just getting started. Joseph arrives in Egypt and is sold to Potiphar, a high-ranking official in Pharaoh's court. And despite everything that had happened to him, Joseph thrived. Why? Because the Bible tells us that the Lord was with Joseph. Genesis 39, verse 2. Potiphar noticed Joseph's skills, and soon enough, he was put in charge of the entire household. But just when things were looking up, life threw Joseph another curveball. Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, and when Joseph refused her advances out of loyalty to his master, she falsely accused him of attacking her. Joseph was thrown into prison, falsely accused, and once again, stripped of his status. How many times have we faced unjust situations where we did everything right and yet still suffered? It's easy to lose hope in those moments, but Joseph didn't. Even in prison, God was with him. He became a trusted prisoner, eventually interpreting dreams for Pharaoh's servants, who were jailed alongside him. This ability would soon become the key to Joseph's deliverance. Let's pause and consider what Joseph must have been feeling. He's endured betrayal, slavery, false accusations, and imprisonment, all for things beyond his control. Yet, he remains faithful and continues to trust God. And this trust is what sets him up for one of the greatest comebacks in history. One day, Pharaoh himself had a troubling dream. 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 skinny cows and 7 healthy grains swallowed by 7 thin ones. No one could interpret the dream, but one of Pharaoh's servants remembered Joseph from prison. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh, and with God's wisdom, he explained the dream. Egypt would experience 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to store up food during the good years to prepare for the famine. Pharaoh was so impressed with Joseph that he made him second in command over all of Egypt. Just like that, Joseph, the former slave and prisoner, was now a ruler in the most powerful nation on earth. How's that for a divine turnaround? Joseph's interpretation proved true. Egypt thrived during the 7 years of abundance, but when the famine hit, the surrounding nations suffered, including Joseph's family back in Canaan. His brothers, unaware of Joseph's rise to power, came to Egypt looking for food. They stood before Joseph, not recognizing him, but Joseph knew exactly who they were. Now here's where the story gets really interesting. Joseph had the power to exact revenge. He could have punished his brothers for what they did. But instead, he chose to test them, to see if they had changed. He accused them of being spies, held Simeon hostage, and told them to return with their youngest brother, Benjamin. What do you think was going through Joseph's mind during this time? He wasn't just testing them, he was also wrestling with his own emotions, wondering if he could truly forgive them. Forgiveness is tough, especially when the hurt comes from family. What would you have done in Joseph's shoes? After multiple interactions, Joseph couldn't hold back any longer. When his brothers returned with Benjamin, Joseph tested them one last time by placing his silver cup in Benjamin's sack and accusing him of theft. But instead of abandoning Benjamin, the brothers defended him and offered to take his place. This showed Joseph that they had changed. In one of the most emotional moments in the Bible, Joseph reveals his identity. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery." Genesis 45:4. His brothers were shocked, terrified even. But instead of seeking revenge, Joseph embraced them, weeping. He said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good, to bring about the saving of many lives." Genesis 50:20. This is where the real heart of Joseph's story lies, forgiveness. It wasn't easy for Joseph to forgive, but he did. He recognized that God had a greater plan, even through the pain and betrayal. How many of us struggle with forgiveness? It's one of the hardest things to do, but it's also one of the most freeing. Joseph's story is packed with lessons that we can apply to our lives today. First, it's a story about faithfulness. Even when things seem hopeless, God is always working behind the scenes. Joseph faced countless trials, but he never gave up. How can we remain faithful in our own trials? Sometimes the hardest part is trusting that there's a purpose behind the pain. Second, it's a story about forgiveness. Joseph didn't let bitterness consume him. Instead, he chose to forgive his brothers, and that act of forgiveness brought healing to his entire family. Is there someone in your life you need to forgive? It's hard, but Joseph's story shows us that it's possible. Lastly, Joseph's story reminds us that God has a plan. What others meant for evil, God used for good. Even in the darkest moments, God's plan is unfolding. We might not see it right away, but if we trust Him, we'll find that even our greatest struggles can lead to our greatest blessings. Thank you for sticking with me as we explored Joseph's incredible story. There's so much we can learn from his life about trust, faith, and forgiveness. So, what part of Joseph's journey resonates most with you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Joseph's story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing biblical stories. I'll see you next time as we uncover more of the Bible's epic tales. Until then, remember, even in life's toughest moments, God is always working for your good. See you in the next video.